Alright, welcome to the second part of the character modeling tutorial for Animation Master. In this tutorial I'm going to build the arm minus the hand, and we'll go from here. So in the last tutorial I created the torso, and in this one I'm going to create the arm. Now when we create the profile of the arm, we want to make sure that we're using the rotoscope here, so that as I've drawn it out we can follow these contours to create the arm. So it's real simple. I'm just going to start by laying out some splines here. So I'm just going to hit A to add a spline. I'm just going to start putting in right click, another one here, go down from the base here, and I'm going to want to line these up so that I can create a cross section that will attach them all. So I'm going straight across here. I can see how I'm going to line up my my splines. Now if I go into this mode here, or into tumble mode, if I go to my side view in 6, I can see how these two splines aren't exactly where I want them. So I'm going to go back into my front view, just select some of them, hit the /, go back to 6, hit N to go into move mode, and then move them over so that they'll be right in the middle here. Okay, we'll do some adjusting as we need to. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another spline up the middle of it here. So I'm going to go 1, 2, I'm just going like that. Actually, what I think I want to do is I want to delete that spline, and then what I want to do is just start attaching these two. So once again, you hit the A button, click, click, right click. A, click, click, right click. A, click, click, right click. Oops. And then here I have to go A, click, 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 right click. So now my continuity is going correctly. And then now what I can do is just select all of these and hit Y, and it will create a control point right in the middle. And then I can hit the A key and just go straight up this line here. Okay, so now I've got the basic, very basic cross section of my arm. You can see how I'm going to start attaching this in here. First of all, we're gonna build this part of the arm. So you can see what I've got here. I'm going to start kind of pushing and pulling some points here. You can see how these faces are flipped, so I'm going to select that, hit the / to select the whole thing, and hit F to flip it. That way you can see what it looks like. Now I'm just going to start holding the 3 key down and pulling these out. See how I'm kind of determining what the profile of the arm is going to look like here. Alright, so you can kind of see where I'm going here. Now we'll put in more detail as we need to. Okay, so now what I want to do is I actually want to duplicate this and flip it backwards. So I'm going to select this, hit the / key, the / key, go into my side view, hit copy and paste, and then without changing anything you right click on it and say flip Z-axis, and then hit the N key, and you can move it over like this. So you can see where I'm going with this. But then with that selected, hit H, and it'll hide everything but that piece that we just copied. Now, I want to select this spline, so select the spline like this, hit the comma key, and then you'll see all this here. Just hit delete, and do the same with this spline down here. Select comma key and delete. Now hit H to unhide everything. Select these, hit the / button, and hit H. So now I've just got that piece of arm geometry, and I want to start attaching these pieces into here. Now on the end here, Animation Master for some reason loves to mess with continuity. Like if I grab this point and I try and attach it here, you'll see how it wants the continuity to go this way. I don't know why it does that. It just does. So I'm going to hit undo. And that didn't work, so I'm going to hit Shift K. There. Okay. So what you have to do is you have to select this CP going in this direction. If you select right here and you hit Y, it will split it on this side. But if you select it, if I click over here, you'll see how it selects this spline, because it would be continually going that way. If I select over here, it'll go that way, and then I hit Y, and it will kind of squirt out this other piece of the spline. Well, I can just right-click there to attach it, and then delete that one. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Hit Y, and then do that and delete. So now I've got those edges attached. Now the rest of these, all you have to do is just right or click on it. So I'm just going click, 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 click. I'm just going to do these bottom ones first so I can see them. And I'll do the top here. Okay, so now I've got this pretty solid piece of geometry here. It doesn't look like an arm a whole lot, the cross section does, but now I can start pulling points out. So I'm going to hold down the 3 button. This is his elbow, his arm here. Kind of comes out like this. Go into my top view here and I can see it better. So here's my elbow right here. Pull it out a little bit. And then also I want to move these back just slightly so that they conform to the shape of the arm a little bit better. I'm going to go to my 0 or hit 0 to go to the underside view or the bottom view and do the same thing. So just holding the 3 key down. Kind of readjust these. Now we'll go back in and build in some better detail than this geometry that we've got here, but you can see now it looks a lot more like an arm. If I unhide everything else by hitting H, it looks a lot better. So from here, let's attach the arm into the body. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the body, just select a point, hit /, and then hit H to hide everything else. And then I want to delete this section, so I'm going to hit K, click this one, K, and then I'm going to select these 2 and hit delete. Now you can see here how I've set it up. I want to take each of these 4 splines and tie them in to the main part of the geometry. So now I've got these 5-point patches. But what I want to do before that is divide each of those. So I'm going to divide these. Just hit Y, 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 and Y. And then I'm just going to attach those. Now you can see how I'm kind of got this a lot better of splinemanship, if you want to call it that. I've got these continuous splines moving around so that I get good deformation. And what I'm going to do here now is I actually want to have a little more definition in the arm, and so I want to bring some splines down here, but that's good because all I really need to do is start subdividing all this, and I'm going to do that just by going like this, just selecting all these and hitting Y, and I'm going to pause it while I do that, and then you'll see what the outcome is. So I'm just going to go down each of these splines and divide them, and then attach a new spline in there so I can put a little bit more definition in, and then you can see what I've done after that. Okay, so now you can see what I've done. I've put another spline in between all those other ones so that I can have a little better deformation and some more detail in the model. So what I'm going to do now is start to kind of shape it out the way I want to. Now, there's a couple other hotkeys that you can use for manipulating points. The main one that I use is 6. It moves it perpendicular to the normal. So if you hold 6 down and you click it, it will go perpendicular, or along, I should say along the normal. I shouldn't say perpendicular, but if I click this one and move it, you can see how it moves. Moves up and down along that normal. So when I want to round stuff out, a lot of times I'll just select it and hit 6, and it'll kind of go out along the normal. Like I'm doing right here, and that way you keep the curvature. Oops. You keep a lot of the curvature that way. And you don't have those weird angled, like when you just divide a spline, you can see how it's still just almost like a diamond. So I use 6 to just bulge it out just slightly here. I'm going to go down to the underside here. Do the same thing just by holding down 6. I'm just going to have kind of beefy forearms. That's kind of the character style that I wanted him to have. So I'm going to go to my top view again and start kind of shaping this out. Because I don't want I want these forearms to be pretty round. So I'm just going to start kind of rounding the shapes out. And along the hand, you actually want your wrist to be flat in the opposite direction your forearm is. Your forearm is kind of flat this way, and your wrist is flat this way. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping this kind of flat here. Let me bulge that elbow out just slightly. You can just kind of twiddle around with this, fiddle around with it till you feel like it's the way you want it. Bulge this just slightly. He's got a tricep. This up a bit, so he's got kind of an armpit. I'm going to move it in here. It's back. See how it's kind of starting to take shape. Now it's not exactly what I want yet, but we'll see how it works. The nice thing about Animation Master is once you have modeled your character, you can always go back in and fix it even after you've rigged it, and it will take on the new properties from the rig. So I'm just gonna do this. What I actually want is I want this to be a pectoral muscle. This comes down here from, it attaches up inside on your the bicep bone right here. Attaches and comes down this way. So I actually want this spline to kind of deform or show that muscle. So I'm actually going to pull it out here, do this, and then when I attach it, I'm going to attach it down to these. So I'm actually going to split this, and attach this one in right here. Whoops, didn't mean to hit Y there. Okay, now this is going to be my lat right here. This will kind of define my latissimus muscle, so I just want to subdivide this and bring it down this way and then just hook it off right there. But now I can bring this one in because that's kind of part of the underside of the underarm, and bring this out so it matches. Like if I go into here, I can start to match my rotoscope. Back of it goes this way. So we can start to see how it's kind of, this is the one that I want to define the pectoral muscle, so I'm actually going to start to drop these a bit here. I'm just going to hold down 2 so that one stays on its axis. And go into wireframe mode, and then I can just hit 2 to go like this. And the nice thing about this is I'm already starting to get some some detail in this. I'm going to hit 3. Just bring it out, 3, and bring this one out. And then this big 5-point patch, I'm just going to create a 5-point patch in it. So select those 5. If it doesn't show up here, what you have to do is you select those 5 points by holding down Shift, hit hide or H to hide everything else, select the whole thing again, and then do it. I don't know why it does that, but it likes to do that for some reason. So here I've got a pretty good for really low amount of splines. I've got a good little pectoral muscle here. So that's kind of how I want to attach that in. Now this one I'm already done creating what I need to, so I'm going to select those, hide everything else, select it, and then make a 5-point patch. So now I've got the back side of my lat. If I go to my front view here, this is kind of, if I bring this out just slightly, that's a little bit better. There we go. Now what I might think about doing is, see that I've got these 2 hooks right here, but all it is keeping this, and I can add some more deformation. So I'm going to select the hook, go into wireframe mode, select the hook, hit Shift K to detach it, and this one too, just hit Shift K. And then here I'm going to go Y, Y, and Y. And then I can attach this in, and then use A to just attach that all the way up the body. So now I've got this, and I can start to use these splines as a little bit better deformation. So like this spline here that's supposed to be going in, I can use this one and pull it out some more, and this one too. Go into my side view, and now you can see how I'm starting to keep the look of my rotoscope here. So actually what I'm going to want to do is move these out so they're a little further away from his chest, and then move this, maybe scoot it down slightly. Maybe up, maybe in just a little bit to give it that kind of look of a pec. Now if you ever want to check what your model is going to render like, you can render right in the view by hitting the Q button. If you hit Q and then you click in the window, it will render the entire window. Hit spacebar to refresh it, and if you hit Shift Q, right now it gives me this render lock. If if you look at the green render, it's a progressive render with a lock, which means that I can select the whole window and it will just keep it locked down, and I can tumble and it'll refresh it, so it'll do this and then it'll render it for me. That's pretty slow, so I hit escape to get out of that, hit escape twice, and I'm going to go into Tools, Customize, Keyboard, and if I go down to let's see here, Progressive Render Mode, I want to say create, or I want to do this, create shortcut, press the new shortcut key, and while you're here you hit Shift Q, say OK, and then say OK, and it will take it off of that render lock and then assign it to just the progressive render, which is nice. So you hit Shift Q and now it doesn't have a lock on it, and you just right click and drag the area that you want to see, and then that's all you have to do. So I just do that. Now 5-point patches, when you're doing a progressive render like that, you'll see how they render pretty horribly. But if you just hit Q and then right click and drag, it will render it normally, and now you can see how it looks better. So I've got my arm set up here. We'll kind of keep tweaking the shapes that we have. I'm just holding down 6 as I do this. See here how it's kind of still looking really weird. Kind of round this out a little bit here. I want that elbow to remain kind of pinched, so that you get a good elbow look to it. I'm going to move these up. Your triceps, I'm not really trying to make it anatomically correct, but I want to make it look like it works. And your triceps come down and attach down here, so you kind of taper off. Now I can make him huge, these big old tricep muscles like this, but I won't do that. Just undo it. So you can see I'm starting to get a nice kind of rounded look to this. I'm not always using 6. I'm kind of using combinations of how I want to constrain things. Like this here, I'm just moving the points through. Now if you hold out your own arm and look at the way your arm is, if you put your hand out flat, it has kind of a twist to it. If I was going to model this with his hand down, like if I go into my front view and I look at my hand, the way it is right now, if you put your hand like that, you'll see that there's a twist to your forearm. So what I'm actually going to do is start to model this as if it had that twist in it. So you can do one of two things. You can take this section right here and go into your properties and say rotate on its x-axis 90 degrees, and then take it here, go hit S, and then start to kind of squish it down and pull it out like that, and then take this ring and rotate it, but not quite as far. That, and then this one, rotate it, but not quite as far as that one. And then this one, rotate it not quite as far as that one. And you can see how this one needs, I think, needs to go a little further. And then this one, just barely turn it, just enough to make it work. So now you can see how the splines are doing this kind of turning thing. But that's what we want. We want it to look like it's turning, so that when I model it with his hand down and I make him turn his hand palm towards us, so if this was his palm, you'd actually see that that twist in his hand there. something new that I've been kind of playing with, and it just gives it a bit better distortion. Now you can go back in here and start kind of tweaking with these points to make them look right. Sometimes just rotating doesn't do the job the way it needs to. So this is basically the same exact shape that we had before we rotated it. It's just that we rotated it, and then so now we can attach the hand right there. But what this will do is it will give us, when he turns his palm towards us, it will give us that nice turn back to a flat arm. So let's leave it right there. This is looking pretty good. I'm going to kind of finesse this a bit. I actually want his shoulder muscle to come down like this. So I'm going to kind of pinch this here and bring these back. You can see how I'm doing this. So I'm just kind of putting these in the spot that I want them to be, so that it looks the best. Your rotoscope sometimes may not be exactly what you desire it to be. It may look good on paper, but you get it in 3D and it tends to not look very good. So you can sit here and kind of mess around with it. This way I'm getting kind of a look of the shoulder. Oops. Shoulder muscle coming in. Kind of bulge this bicep or this tricep just slightly, so it looks like I got a little bit of definition here. Maybe pull it back just a little bit. If I go into my top view, you can see how it's kind of concave, so I'm going to kind of pull it back, push this in. Okay, so it's still pretty cartoony. It's not really anatomically correct, but it's enough to give our characters a little bit of texture, if you will. A lot of times people will just use really simple, very simple models, and that's great. I like the look of something that has a little more definition to it. So let's finish off these last two up here. So I'm just going to do this. I don't want a whole lot of splines for the neck here, and we may change later on, but for right now I'm just going to attach these splines out this way. You can kind of make sure your surface is smooth. Go this way too. So I'm going to hit Y here and Y there, and then attach those out. And then I can take this 5-point patch, highlight it, create it, flip it, and then these ones, hit H to hide it, hide everything else, select the whole thing, hit the make button, and hit H to show everything else again. So now you can kind of see where this is going. Now this one, what I can use is I can use it for a clavicle, a suggestion of a clavicle. So what I'm going to do is go hit 4, so I can kind of see what I'm doing. Oh, it looks like my rotoscope is off in that view. Oh, you know what it is? I think I've realized. Okay, well, anyways, let me go back here. This is the right side. What it is if you go into translate, my X is in positive. It actually needs to be negative. There, now it matches up. Okay. So if I go to 2 on my numpad, you can see here's my front view, 6 is my side. What I want to do with this kind of clavicle is bring this one in so it goes up to the neck, and this one too. But then I just want to take this, holding down number 2, and bring it up slightly, this one too, just slightly, and then bring this one down a little bit so that it creates kind of a little a little step there. So this one I'm always using either 2 or 3 as a constraint so that it stays on that y-axis, or on that x0 axis. One thing you can do if you ever move something like that and you're like, oh no, it's not directly on the axis, you can go to your front view or any view, just select that spline, hit the comma to select the whole thing, go over here to pivot, change your pivot to 0 in the x, and then scroll down to scale, and in x goes 0. Now everything is lined up back on that axis. So that's how you can do it if you ever screw something up. So I'm just moving this with 2 and 3. So that's kind of how I just make a suggestion of a clavicle. You don't have to have one on there. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll use this spline right here kind of as a for underneath the clavicle. And move this one up here, this one up like this. But maybe I don't want quite as much, so I'm going to bring this up here. And then from the front, if I go to my front view, clavicles actually have a curve to them, so I'm going to want to bring this down, and this down, and this down, and this. Just bring it up like that. Okay, so now if I do a quick render, see this is kind of flat right here. I want to make it a little more round, so actually I'm going to divide these like this, and then one more, connect it there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook off this end right here. So I'm going to add a spline right there and then click it right there to add it in. So now what I can do is go into my side view, and you can see how this is looking pretty flat. So I'm going to just take it, round it up a little bit, round it out just a little bit right there, round it out just a little bit, maybe bring it up just slightly. So 2 and 3. Okay, so it's looking a little more round. Once again, I'm not going for anatomically perfect. I just want to give a hint of muscles. And this looks really flat right here, but actually when we attach the other side, it will actually create a curve that will go across it, which is really nice. So go back to my front view and then just drag this down slightly and leave it there. So now if I hit Shift Q and I render this, you can see what it looks like. Or just Q, and right click and drag, and then that's what it'll look like as it's rendered. So that's pretty much it for the arm. What we've attached it in, we've created a lat, we've created the armpit here. We can actually make it a little more just by hitting 2 and pushing up. It looks a little better. Now, if I wanted to put more detail in, I could put another spline in right here that would go up here and then hook off in the arm, and that would give me a nice cut for the pectoral muscle there. But I'm not interested in doing that right now, so I'm just going to leave it right here as it is, and I think that's good for the arm. But let's right-click, save as, and then go to your models folder and save it as will03.mdl, and that's it.